I knew he was a taxi driver, and I always said that there would be a wonderful film of me and him getting together, and coming together, and embracing each other, having made my career, but, don't know who he is, and, we've got to get on with our lives, I suppose. Going into training, we went straight to the pub after, and everybody was drinking and getting drunk. But when we trained properly. It just happened to be me and Peter standing outside Anfield in our tracksuits, and it was just an NF right behind my head. I mean, no one thought anything of it at the time, because that was happening all the time when bananas were on the field. As much as it looks great, it never felt great at all, because Tony Woodcock came running across, and I was about to shoot. And as I'm about to shoot, he then comes across and jumps because he thinks I'm going to shoot. I think I'm going to shoot. So instead of shooting, I've got a chop inside of my left foot. Then all of a sudden, I'm in front of goal. No one gets the ball and thinks I'm going to dribble until I score a goal. No one does that. I remember the 90s when I was playing for Liverpool, and come 95, 96, and we were really playing well in January, February. Collymore foul up front, scoring goals. And I always felt come March, we would fall away. Because come March is when you've got to get a result when you're not playing well. I'm always got to be up there. And of course, you talk about the top 2, 3, 4, 5, but Mo will be in the top 5 of all time. 100%. Why is football being held to a different standard? Does it question Lewis Hamilton's morals to race there? Does it question AJ's morals to box there? The tennis players who go to Qatar so why is football being held to a different standard? Because we accept, and Lewis Hamilton is a champion for LGBTQ and Black Lives Matter, whatever, but he races in Saudi. So and no one bats an eyelid. So why are footballers being held to a different standard?
Hello everybody, and a warm welcome then to In The Zone, a series of course brought to you by Gambling Zone, your trusted online gambling comparison site. In every episode we're talking to some of the biggest names in sport, charting their personal story in many respects, their highs and lows on their way to going to the very top. And I'm delighted this week I am joined by a very special guest, a man who, was considered one of the most skillful footballers on these shores. He was brilliant for England, but he mesmerised for Liverpool, winning 4 major honours in the process. Oh, and he can rap a bit. He is John Barnes. How are you, John?
And Watford, don't forget.
Yeah, we'll get to Watford.
But you said mesmerised for Liverpool. Obviously, don't say mesmerised for Newcastle or Charlton. You can stop it there, but you can add Watford into the equation.
Yeah.
Because it was so funny.
I thought we'd go headline first.
We can't swear on this, can we?
Say again?
We can't swear on this. I don't mean swearing and swearing. Okay, I'll use it, because I'll tell you what
within
about football
limits,
fans. Within limits.
Yeah.
Only because I was coming back from, I was in Jersey, and I was on the plane, and there's a man, businessmen coming over. And I'm amazed when you have businessmen in their business, and they're very correct. But when it comes to football, as you know, they go to football matches and just rough it. So I'm on the next to a man, he's got his suit on, and he was obviously a Newcastle fan, and he goes, "Oh, it's really nice to meet you, even though you're crap for Newcastle." That's what he said to me.
That's a great introduction.
Why would you even say that? He just says, "Nice to meet me," or and he was like, "But there you go."
How did you take that?
As I take it.
As you take everything.
When people tell the same way I tell them when people tell me that I'm the best in the world. I don't believe either of them.
Look, come on, you were definitely.
I'm not as good as I was. I'm not as bad as I was.
No, you were definitely up there. You might not feel the need to say that yourself, and I understand that. But how are you? You look well.
I'm very good, yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
We're approaching...
Got the tube here. I thought you might have sent a limousine to pick me up because I assume
Did they not
that's
come?
what you do with all the superstars when you get off the train at Euston. I just got the underground. I had to go to Highbury and Islington. I think Carl Froch told me that you sent a limo for him.
Yeah. But this is the kind of humble kind of person you are. That's what we
I know this area very well.
Yeah, I know.
I mean, growing up, I lived in Highgate up the road, and I used to go and watch Arsenal play, and I love walking around London. Love London, buses and trains. That's
also, this time of year, everything's a bit prettier as well, isn't it? And I know you love this time of year as well.
Not up this part of the world, obviously. The Islington and I know is not the same.
But look, let's go to your personal story. Born in Jamaica. What was it like when you were growing up in the West Indies?
If you ask anybody what it was like growing up, it was life. It was their life. I didn't have anything to compare it with. So for me to say it was better, it was worse, it was just life, and I didn't expect to come to England. So, but it was a very privileged upbringing I had. As much as looking back, I know that now. At the time, I didn't think so, because my dad was an army officer, so we lived in a nice big house, and he had a chauffeur, and he was a diplomat when we came here. So I had a very privileged upbringing. My mother's family started the first Jamaican government, so it was a very political family. They were very socialist in their outlook, as much as we were privileged. But it was full of sport. My dad he was a colonel in the army, but he played football for Jamaica as an amateur. Squash. My sisters played squash for Jamaica, swam for Jamaica. My other sister played tennis. So it was a very, very sporting family. So growing up, it was all about, my sister swam for Jamaica as well. So it was all about, sport in my as well as, apart from me, education for the bright ones, my sisters.
What's this thing I heard about your dad's involvement with the Jamaican bobsleigh team? And that it was part of that story was the thought behind Cool Runnings, the movie.
It was the whole reason behind it. My dad played a very small part in it. The part my dad played in it was that the real character, he understood that bobsleighing is about the start, the sprint. Yes? And his thing is that you can teach somebody how to drive, but you can't teach them to sprint. So he had been coming to Jamaica for many years, and he understands how athletics plays a big part in Jamaican culture. And he feels that he could get Jamaicans, it was a bit of a PR thing, to be a bobsleigh team, because as long as you can get the start, he can teach them how to drive. So he came to my dad and he wanted 4 army officers to be the bobsleigh team, good army officers who are good athletes. And my dad said to him that, no, you can't just choose 4 army officers. You have to have, if you want to have a trial for the Jamaica bobsleigh team, you have to have open trials. But the guy understood, because he'd come into Jamaica for many years, that if you have open trials and they're just 4 normal boys from the street,
laymen,
then when you have winter training up in America, they may go missing. Because, a lot of people in Jamaica want to go to America.
Yeah.
But he felt that 4 army officers with a good job and a good upbringing aren't going to abscond.
Yeah.
And my dad didn't feel insulted. He wasn't insulting Jamaicans because, of course, that was the way it was. Probably still is now where Jamaicans want to get. So what my dad allowed him to do is to train the 4 army officers for about 3 months. They were good athletes. To train them in the bobsleigh. And then when they have the trials, they should win. So he did that. They trained them, 4 of them. 3 of them won. The 4th one got into the team. The 4th one didn't.
Yeah.
It was just a normal layman from the street, a young boy who was a good athlete. The first trip they had to Calgary or something like that. The next day, as they got there, and they never saw that boy again.
No.
So the 4th army officer got into the team. So that was the story. That's nothing. Obviously, the Cool Runnings film was the film, but it was in terms of how it came about.
Yeah, but he was involved in some
how
respect.
it came about.
Yeah.
So it wasn't to do with the film, it was to do with getting the team together.
Yeah. But you talk about your father being in the military and that background. Did that make for a very disciplined upbringing for you?
Absolutely. And I mean, I fought against it daily, because I was quite rambunctious, as you say, and I like to live life. But my dad was all about discipline. Insofar as, just to explain the way I was brought up, was, as Tony, my sisters used to swim, and they swam for Jamaica. I swam as a 9-year-old in the under 10s in a Miami invitational meet, and we had to go to swimming training every day. Because my dad said, if you're going to do anything, be it football, swimming, whatever you do, you've got to do it with authenticity, with discipline, with determination. And every now and again, instead of going to swimming training every day, I would sometimes stop off and play football with my friends. And he said to me, if you're not going to take it seriously and go swimming, I was 10 years old, if you're not going to go swimming every day, don't do it. So even when I came here to England and I started playing football, my first football club, Stowe Boys Club in Paddington, I played as a centre-back for 4 years. I was never a centre-back. I was always an attacking player. But when I got to the team, Stowe Boys Club in Paddington, we were winning 10 and 15 nil in Regent's Park. No one wanted to play at the back. So my dad said, the responsibility for the team, you're going to play at the back. So for 4 years, played at the back before I went to Sudbury Court at 16, then played on the wing and went to Watford. Yeah. So discipline played a big part, and the team, the responsibility to the team, and of course with Graham Taylor, it was the same thing.
Yeah. At Sudbury Court, you were spotted by a taxi driver. How did that happen?
Well, I didn't know. Obviously, a taxi driver just happened to be passing. Sudbury Court is in place by Wembley. Not in Wembley Stadium, but by Wembley. And we haven't got a stadium, we've got a clubhouse, and you get 5 or 6 people watching. One of them happened to be a taxi driver who just watched the game, and he knew a scout at Watford. So if that taxi driver didn't come and watch the game, I would have not made
Have you ever found out who that guy was?
No. I knew he was a taxi driver. And I always said that there would be a wonderful film of me and him getting together, and coming together and embracing each other, having made my career. But, don't know who he is, and, we've got to get on with our own lives, I suppose. So, I wish him all the best.
That would be a wonderful documentary, actually.
But then he knew a scout. What hand did he knew a scout at Watford? So that's how it went on. But I didn't find out who it was.
But obviously, look, Watford is where you made your name. I mean, they were enjoying their most successful period back then. Kind of like chasing down Liverpool for the league title, FA Cup semi-final, quarterfinals of the UEFA Cup. Very
and
much.
we finished second in the league.
Yeah.
Now we'd be in the Champions League.
Yeah.
By finishing second, you went straight into the UEFA Cup.
Under Graham Taylor, who you just touched upon, Graham. How big an influence was he on you?
Huge. As I said, it's really funny the way things work out, because from my dad's perspective, having that discipline from I was 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, even coming to England when my friends were going out at 15, I always would go out with them, sneak out, get in trouble. But my dad was always saying, you got to train hard, forget about your talent, so you run around. When we lived just off Piccadilly, we used to have to run around Hyde Park every night, and even when I didn't want to. So therefore, but then going to Watford with Graham Taylor was exactly the same thing. And I just assumed that this is what professional football is. Discipline, humility, determination. Till I went to Watford and found out what real football was.
Yeah.
With the culture that was there. But I'm glad that my formative years, obviously growing up in Jamaica, and then, from 13 to 17 here, then my dad got recalled back to Jamaica. I got offered a football scholarship to Howard University, and had this taxi driver not stopped, I would have gone to Howard University.
Gone there.
Yeah, that's where I was going. So then I stayed at Watford, and then with Graham Taylor for 6 years, just endorsing what my dad has spoken about, the humility, the togetherness, the belief, not just about your individual quality. It was just a great apprenticeship for me to have till I was 23 and went to Liverpool. And it's interesting because, even when I played for Watford, my first responsibility, as much as people talk about being the player I was, I knew my first responsibility was not to let my fullback run and get a crossing defensively. So he says, yes, you can go forward, do what you do, but if you let that fullback go and get a crossing, I'm going to have you behind. So therefore, I understood the responsibility to the team at all levels.
You mesmerised on the wing. Did that all come so naturally to you? Was it something you had to work on?
Well, I was always a skillful player, but you have to work on your attitude and your fitness and your physical ability. And at Watford, we train really hard. So, look at Matthew Le Tissier. Imagine if he was really fit, how great he would be, type of thing. So, of course, you marry the two together. So I always had the ability, but of course, regardless of the ability, you have to, have the mentality and also have the physical capabilities to do it. Because, of course, back then as well, no matter how good you are, you were allowed to get kicked.
Yeah.
Now playing and how skillful you are, people can't kick you. But back then, no matter how skillful you were, if you weren't strong and quick and tough, you were never going to make it.
In 1987, your life-defining move to Liverpool came about. Kenny Dalglish was there. He was making the transition from player to full-time manager, wasn't he? Ian Rush was already going to Juventus.
Yeah.
And you were part of a trio of Peter Beardsley, John Aldridge. That was quite something, because the three of you was that front three were brilliant for Liverpool for so long.
Yeah.
But you were surprised by the training sessions, right?
Well, I mentioned about discipline and the way that I thought professional football was, A, from the way I was brought up, then B, Watford, and expecting Liverpool to be even more ultra-professional because they're the best team in the country. And, I went out in Southport the first night I got there, before I signed the next day, because Kenny lived in Southport. Went out with Mark Lawrenson, and I think I can't remember the next 2 days. And then going into training, we went straight to the pub after, and everybody was drinking and getting drunk. But when we trained properly. But off the pitch, you were allowed, and it wasn't Liverpool, it was the culture.
Yeah, that was everywhere, yeah.
Look at Arsenal before Arsene Wenger came, look at Manchester United with Paul McGrath, Brian Robson, and we know that. So this was a culture. But because I was 23, I really knew when to get involved and when not to get involved. I'd hate to have been a 17-year-old getting into that, because you just do what you see the older players doing. But the football was incredible in terms of the discipline when it came to football. In training, you may have been slightly drunk from the night before, but when you trained properly. So that culture was difficult for me. It wasn't difficult, sorry. It was easy for me to understand, because I was 23 years old. I've been playing for England for 4 years, playing for Watford for 6 years at the highest level. As a 17-year-old boy, that would have been difficult for me to navigate.
Yeah. But that training session wasn't kind of like, as it is now, patterns of play, it was almost left to you, Liverpool, to develop your own in-game management.
Well, first of all, what Liverpool did, and I suppose a lot of clubs did. If you look at what Manchester United did when they signed Brian Robson, he's England's captain. He's been playing for West Brom for 6-7 years. Then he goes to Manchester United. Peter Beardsley, Newcastle for 6-7 years. John Aldridge at Oxford. Nowadays, you have a 18, 19-year-old player who has one good season. He then costs £80 million. Yeah. You don't go into the cauldron. That's a big club. So what Liverpool do is they watch you. They see whether you can fit into what they want. They see you can use your initiative, because Liverpool's mantra is work it out yourself. So you learn from what you saw in training, and you saw the way they played, and all we did was play 8-a-side football, yellows versus the reds, and they said pass to someone in a red, and when the yellows have it, you work out to try and win it back. They didn't coach you, they didn't have any tactics, but because they had experienced players, and you learn from what you saw, which I initially found strange, but because I had that experience, and they see things in you that you don't see in yourself, because obviously Watford played completely different to the way Liverpool played. So how can I be a Liverpool player? And I must admit, when I first went, I thought I was going to play up front with John Aldridge, because Peter came a week after me.
Yeah.
So when I came, and it's not like now where the big rumors about who's coming. So we didn't know Peter was coming. They didn't know I was coming. And I played up front against Liverpool and scored a few goals in the previous year. So when Rushy is gone, Aldo's there by himself, I'm going to play up front. So I've signed. 1 week later, they've signed Peter Bears left. So I've gone, where am I going to play? They said, you're going to play on the left. And I said, yeah, but when I played on the left for Watford, you get your head down to the line, put crosses in. Liverpool don't play that way. He goes, you'll work it out yourself. At halftime, sometimes Ronnie Moran would come in and he'd go, what's gone wrong? I know, but I'm not telling you. Work it out yourself and walk out.
Really?
And you know why he does that? And it's a real Liverpool thing to learn, which you have to get used to. And if you look at it now, with even Klopp, Mourinho, Guardiola, they just coach to the nth degree in terms of explaining to the players how they have to play for the 90 minutes and what's going to happen in the match. Now, if you're out on the pitch and what he says is going to happen doesn't happen, what do? Do you look to the coach and you say, you said it was going to be like this? You have to use your initiative to work it out yourself. And that's what Liverpool's thing was. They give you a few guidelines, but apart from that, work it out yourself. One of the biggest lessons I learned was, I think it was Jim Beglin, when he was playing left back, and Ronnie Moran said to him, go on the post for the corner, as a defender, because the opposition corner, so he's on the post. Corner comes in, goal. Half time he says to Jim, where were you? He said, I was on the post. He said, what are you doing on the post? He said, you told me to go on the post. And he said to him, yeah, but if I told you to jump in a fire, would you do that as well? Now, what he's saying to him is that I've given you an instruction to be on the post. But while you're on the post, if you see danger somewhere else and you think that's more dangerous, you then use your initiative, defy me, and go and do that. So you have to work it out yourself, because they can't play the game for you.
How aware were you that you were only maybe the second black player to play for Liverpool after Howard Gale?
I was very aware, because, of course, with the old speculation on me leading up to it, but very much like when I first went to Watford as a 17-year-old, having not been an apprentice, not been in the youth team, not been in the reserves, and got straight into the first team with more, not just senior players, but senior youth team players than me, the pressure on me, as much as the pressure was there to think, who does he think it was never like that at Watford, because Watford wasn't the club. But you would think that coming in, not being an apprentice, not being a first-year professional like Jimmy Gilligan, Cassidy, all of them, and all of a sudden he's put me in the first team. But because I was prepared, my preparation was everything. So I was prepared to go into the first team at Watford because of my physical preparation, my mental preparation. And at Liverpool, I understood the magnitude of it. But from the first week in training, I knew that, it's a bit like when you talk about bias. You cannot stop Mike Tyson knocking you out. You cannot stop Usain Bolt winning 100 meters. So if you're physically prepared, you can't be stopped. And I'm physically prepared. I'm able to do it. My mindset I've got quite a strong mindset. My teammates were with me. So as much as I knew there was pressure, I knew I was coming into a team that was prepared to handle the pressure, and I'd be a part of that team.
Is it true, though, as soon as you signed for Liverpool, I know you were staying in a hotel in town, did you get some hate mail from supporters?
Of course. And there was a...
Because this was obviously... This was back then. This was
But
quite
there's
prevalent.
a national front on the wall outside Anfield. There's a picture of me and Peter Beardsley when we signed, standing outside the Anfield, the gates, and it was not. It wasn't meant to be that way, but it just happened to be because it wasn't a big deal. That was a national front. Me and Peter are there, right on the wall, just behind my head. Obviously, no one came and did it then. It's been there for a long while, and they didn't think, let's not have that picture there because that's there, because there was a graffiti all over. So it just happened to be me and Peter standing outside Anfield in our tracksuits, and it was just an NF right behind my head. No one thought anything of it at the time, because that was happening all the time when bananas were on the field. So, of course, looking back retrospectively, people are horrified, but back then, it was a...
So you just took it in your stride?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay. First season, 15 league goals. To be honest, that was just you settling in at Anfield during your 10 years there.
But also, don't forget, I was there to provide goals, not to score goals.
Yeah, of course.
That's why it was a big deal for me to score 15 goals.
It's funny, back then assists weren't really credited with as much kudos as they are now. Are they? I mean, I suppose maybe that's because of the fancy Premier League stuff.
Well, they were by the players who scored and by the staff.
Yeah, I mean, but you had almost 100 assists at Liverpool.
But I mean, I didn't need that to say that. Oh, you got an assist type of thing. You did your job. You crossed the ball. If people appreciate it, if not, fine. Whereas now, when you talk about, because an assist now is passing the ball on the halfway line to Messi to dribble around 5 and score, and because you've passed it to him, you've assisted. So it's meaningless. And it's not important at all.
I have to talk about one day in the calendar for Liverpool, which will forever be part of the fabric of that football club. 15th of April 1989, the FA Cup semi-final at Hillsborough, Nottingham Forest. 5.5 minutes in, obviously you're on the pitch, the referee decides to call halt to play. How aware were you of what was about to unfold?
Well, because we weren't aware at all. I think it was 6 minutes, might have been 5. I thought it was 6, but we came off after 6 minutes because we thought it was a pitch invasion, because they had people coming over onto the pitch. So we just ran off the pitch. We're now in the dressing room, and when we're in the dressing room, of course, we think they're going to clear the pitch. So of course, anybody watching on television or anybody was there would be aware of what's going on. We weren't. We were in the dressing room. Ron around was saying, keep warm, we're going out in a minute. Then we're hearing people shouting in the corridor, saying, oh, there are people dying, Scousers going, there are people on the pitch, they're dying, the people are dying, and we thought they were exaggerating. So we were there for probably about 25 minutes before we knew anything. Then eventually, after 25 minutes, we thought, well, the game's now off because of whatever. We didn't know what it was. When we came out into the tunnel, obviously you go right onto the pitch. You kind of look right, you see a little kerfuffle, people in the tunnel, but then we just went up into the elevator into the players' lounge after the game, and that's when we looked out onto the pitch, and that's the first time we could see what was unfolding. So we weren't aware of it at all. And I'll tell you the most interesting thing about the whole Hillsborough debacle is that, and I wasn't aware that it was an issue. I have to say that. I wasn't aware there was an issue. Nottingham Forest had a corner, and I'm on the post for the corner. And I looked right. And, when we played for Liverpool, we always knew the fans, because the fans would come in and autographs. And it's a very emotive picture of the 2 girls who were pushed up against the fence, and we knew them personally. They come and get autographs. Jackie was one of them. She's a garden. I've known her for years. And as I looked to the right, and you had the fence, I saw them, Jackie and the other one, literally 5 yards away, because right there, squashed up against the fence. And it's so strange, because I just remember thinking, that doesn't look very comfortable. And as much as you look back now and you're saying, how could you think that, rather than thinking how terrible it is? We've been used to seeing fans treated that way. Football fans were treated that way forever. I mean, that was really the straw that brought the camel's back. But I've been at football matches before, thinking back, and looked at them being squashed in, and I'm thinking, thought nothing of it at the time, because that is the way they were. So as much as I thought, well, that doesn't look particularly nice, but we've seen things like that before, then you saw people coming over. So it just goes to show how we have become desensitized at that particular time. And you can go back further. That's why when you look back throughout life and you think about how could this happen, you talk about the racism, how could it just be with the national fronts on the wall? It's
all in context and perspective.
Of course, in context. And at that particular time, it just looked as if, well, it's a bit uncomfortable in there, until obviously we came and saw what actually happened. So, but the interesting thing about that is not so much obviously what had happened, but we had to go back to the hospital the next day. And that was really the time that really made me understand how much football means to the people of Liverpool. And I say this all the time. If it had been Coventry versus Scunthorpe, and it was a disaster, I'm sure Coventry fans, Scunthorpe fans would have been exactly the same way. Man United fans, Man City fans would be the same way. I'm not saying Liverpool fans, well, I think they're more special than anyone, but not because of that. But when we went back to the next day, and we had to see, because you had still had people in comas, because obviously they're going to come out of the comas, because they've lost oxygen to the brain, so either they're going to come out or not. But when you're sitting at the bed and you're talking to them, the head of the bed, and this young boy wakes up, you kind of feel like you've done it as much as you haven't. You know what I mean? He's going to wake up anyway. Yeah. And it was the funny thing happened. And as much as, you talk about it a year later, talk about it 20 years later, and you think, yes, it's funny. It was funny at the time when this young boy woke up. Because you have to imagine, this young boy says, I think me on John Aldridge at his bed. And this young boy's opened his eyes. And he's gone, and I won't swear, but he did. He goes, Barnesy. He goes, what are you doing here? Because, of course, he doesn't know what's happening. Yeah, he thinks he's at home. He's woken up in bed. And there's John Aldridge and John Aldridge and John Barnes at his bed. He's going, Barnesy. He goes, Aldo, Kenny. He goes, what's going on? So we all started laughing because this boy was just so delighted, obviously, once he knew what had happened. So that was the first thing that made me feel good. But the thing that really got me was about 4 days later, we then had to go to the Players' Lounge at Anfield because the people who lost their loved ones were now going to come to Anfield. Now, there was an irrational feeling of guilt on my part. They've come to watch me. It's irrational because they came to watch Liverpool. Had I not been playing for Liverpool, they still would have been there. Had I been playing for Liverpool but been injured and not been there, I would have felt less guilty because I wasn't playing. It's all irrational, but I felt a little bit guilty because people are now not going home. And all these, we're going to console and talk to the bereaved, the ones who had lost their loved ones. And I'm sitting, waiting in the Players' Lounge for these people to come in. And they came in, and so many of them were going, I cannot believe I'm in the Players' Lounge with Kenny Dalglish and John Barnes. This is 5 days after they lost their loved ones. If your loved one goes to war, you kind of half expect it. But a circumstance like this, and they were just so excited. Of course, they're devastated, don't get me wrong, but that's how much their club means to them. And in fact, one of them was consoling Janet Hansen, Alan Hansen's wife. One of the mothers was saying, oh, it's okay, and putting on and hugging her. They've just lost a loved one. This is how much their club means to them. And that really brought it home to how much football clubs mean to people. I can talk about Liverpool. I'm sure other clubs are the same. But
do you still carry a little bit of that guilt from that day? Or how has it affected you?
No. And I tell you, no. Well, it hasn't affected me at all, but it's reinforced the way I am as a person. Knowing, and I've always known, and Bill Shankly's not an idiot, and he's not a fool when he says football's more important than life and death. It isn't, and I never thought that.
Yeah.
Family, friendship, life is much more important. So football wasn't the be-all and end-all to me. So when people thought they had to reassess their values after Hillsborough because that happened, I never had to, because football, I always knew football was inconsequential when it came to something like that, and even things that are less than that. So I didn't have to, so it never affected me in that way. It really just brought it home to me how much football fans love their club.
Okay. Let's talk about England and one specific moment for you. 1984, Maracanã against Brazil. I mean, I just mentioned those words and you're already bursting out into a smile. I mean,
not just because of that, because of what you had said earlier about the first black player to play for Liverpool and the national front there. We talk about that, but what we forget is that there's two members of the national front on the plane with us, going to Brazil with their banners unfolded in front of everything and nobody batted an eyelid. Yeah. So as much as you're talking about that on the whole trip, but come on.
Okay, we'll get to that in a second. But when you scored that goal, basically you do a very Brazilian thing against Brazil. The way you're just dribbling past 3-4 players, sit the goalkeeper down and then just stick it in the back of the net. Did you think at the time that goal would be spoken about over 40 years later?
I don't know where it's going to be 40 years later. No, of course not. And of course, even when I scored the goal, I didn't really know what it looked like. Because when you score a goal by dribbling, I say this all the time. You remember Ryan Giggs' goal against when Arsenal beat
FA Cup.
Man United. Man United beat Arsenal. Yeah.
He gets past Martin Keown.
So when you score a goal like that, I can't remember doing it, and I can't remember what it felt like. It's like having an out-of-body experience because all you're doing is reacting. So what I have to do, if you score a goal by dribbling, you are doing the opposite of what the defender does. So you can't think, I want to do this, because if he goes that way, you've got to go the other way. So you're instinctively reacting. Consequently, you don't really remember it. So when I look at it, it looks great. And I'm sure it was great. But in terms of the way it felt, it never felt like, I'm going to do that, I'm going to do that. I just felt like I didn't know what to do. I couldn't see anybody to pass to. I've got to keep going. He went to the right, I'll go to the left. I always say every goal I scored by, with a free kick, for example, I remember, because you consciously remember, you put the ball down and you say to yourself before you've taken it, what I want to do is I want to take 2 steps, then I want to bend it over the wall into the top corner. I'm not taking it. Then when you do it, you consciously remember that's what I thought. So you remember it. When you score a goal by just instinctively doing the opposite of what the defender does, and then in fact, I was even looking to shoot earlier. And that's why, as much as it looks great, it never felt great at all, because Tony Woodcock came running across and I was about to shoot. And as I'm about to shoot, he then comes across and jumps because he thinks I'm going to shoot. I think I'm going to shoot. So instead of shooting, I've got to chop inside with my left foot. Yeah. Then all of a sudden, I'm in front of goal. It looks as if I was just doing that, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But at first, it was like, honestly, I didn't have a clue what I was doing. And anybody who scores a goal like that and says, yes, I meant it. Maradona's goal against England. The first thing you do is look to pass. And he's looking to pass. You can't pass, so you run. You beat one person, you look to pass, so you keep going.
Yeah.
No one gets the ball and thinks, I'm going to dribble until I score a goal. No one does that.
So you talk about the national front, something we've already mentioned earlier. It was 2-0 to England that game, but on the flight back, I think also at the time, a section of England fans were singing only 1-0 to the England because they didn't want to recognise your input with your goal.
I crossed the ball for Mark Hateley though, so it was 0-0.
It was a goalless draw. But how did that make you feel, John? I mean, I know I know you're very confident now. You're 60 years of age.
I was confident then.
Were you more confident then?
Equally as confident.
But when you're on a plane and you've got guys telling you, look, you know, we don't want you in this team.
Right. So I mentioned about the way I was brought up. I'm from a middle-class family in Jamaica who's very political. And you don't know the Jamaican history, but Alexander Bustamante and Norman Manley, Frank and Ken Hill, who's my grandfather, and his brother started the Jamaican government. Alexander Bustamante, Norman Manley were the two prime ministers, started the Jamaica Labour Party, the four of them. My grandfather and his brother broke away from the government because he understood that this new middle-class, light-skinned, elite government is not going to be representative of the black working-class people. So what they did is they started the trade unions and they worked. So I'll tell you why I felt this way ever since I was 17 years old. Is because when I was playing at Hampton against Arsenal, I was maybe 18, coming up the Holloway Road on a Saturday, 6 o'clock, and bananas were coming on me and Luther going up the Holloway Road, and people are saying how terrible it is for me. It must really feel badly. I was having a nice, and you know how we travel on the coach, nice steak, nice glass of wine, completely fine. Not threatened at all because I saw them cheering Michael Thomas when he scored for Arsenal, but for me, he's racially abusing me and Luther. And then I looked into the crowd on Holloway Road, which is not far from here, on a Saturday at 6 o'clock, with all of these National Front people throwing stuff at, and I saw the average working class black person cowering and hiding in corners, being attacked, and no one speaks for them. And I'm fine. So the way I've been brought up from Jamaica is that my life is fine. So when I'm being abused, who's abusing me? Who's abusing me when I'm playing for Liverpool? You know who's abusing me? White working class people who haven't got a job, haven't got a house, some of them are homeless. How can they feel superior to me just because I'm black? My life has never shown me that. So I never felt that. I empathize with any black player who had been disenfranchised growing up, living in London, single parents, dad can't get a job, whatever, council house, and therefore they are made to feel less than. I never was made to feel less than growing up in Jamaica because of my family background. Then when I came to England, we lived in Highgate, we lived in Mayfair. My dad had a chauffeur. And then now I'm playing football, and I now can go to the front of the queue, I can go to Downing Street, and these people are abusing me, can't even spell their own name. They're at the back of the queue when I'm in the front of the queue. So how is my life terrible? So what I then said is that, yes, we'll take this, but let's now talk about real discrimination against the people who need it more. Because my life, so for 90 minutes on a Saturday, there were racist incidents. But for the rest of the time, I could do whatever I wanted. And I said back then, there was not an avenue to have this conversation back then anyway, so I could never have said it. But I felt it. When I got racially abused, I look around to these fans who are racially abusing me or throwing bananas on the field, and I would think to myself, you can't be talking about me because I am superior to you. Yes, you may feel that you're superior to me, but I'm superior to you. And I remember the players used to say to me, oh, that's it. Don't let them know you're getting to me. And I said, you're not getting to me. And they go, that's it. Keep your chin up. Like he's saying to me now, I'm confident now. At 18, 19, it never bothered me because I felt superior to them because of my class.
Yeah, I mean, that's fascinating. I'm in the zone with John Barnes in association with Gambling Zone, your trusted online gambling comparison site. That's John's backstory. In a few moments, we'll be talking about the current big issues in football. Welcome back to In the Zone. I'm with John Barnes in association with Gambling Zone, the trusted online gambling comparison site. So let's talk about what's going on in football right now. We can get into VAR and many other things. John, just the Premier League title race is a very interesting one. Manchester City looking uncharacteristically not themselves. Liverpool have just ended the weekend, top of the table at the end of a match week for the first time in 2 years. So no doubt you'll be happy about that. But we've got Aston Villa, the dark horses, just coming in on the inside. What's your reading of this, what looks like an open title race for some time?
I would still make Man City slight favourites. Interestingly, I'll make a second favourites as much as Arsenal last season ran them close. But I think we had our problems in midfield last year, which we've addressed. And the thing about us now is that, which obviously Arsenal are playing in the same way, that we never played particularly well against Crystal Palace, but we won. And you can see Liverpool, even when I was at the Sheffield United game, we can grind results out, which is a great sign. So those three will be favourites for me. Still Man City favourites, ourselves and Arsenal. Villa is interesting because, of course, Villa are doing really well. You saw them beat Man City. Not only beat them, they outplayed them, which is unusual. When City lose, they don't normally get outplayed. But ever since I played, I remember the 90s when I was playing for Liverpool and come 95, 96, and we were really playing well in January, February, Colin Moore Fowler front scoring goals. And I always felt come March, we would fall away because come March is when you got to get a result when you're not playing well. You know, the squad, are you strong enough? And I think that Villa, you know, is doing great now, but come February when it isn't great football and you need a bigger squad, but you can't ask any more of what they've done. That's why I don't get carried away one way or the other with where we are now. It really comes to February and March when you can grind results out. The pleasing thing for me from Liverpool is that we're not playing as well as we have done, but we're still winning matches. And I have to say the same with Arsenal coming back for so many last-minute winners. They have that mentality.
They've got a knack there, haven't they? I mean, they clearly have become mentally a lot stronger than we're used to seeing in recent years.
Yeah, but what you don't want is to have to score 4 goals.
No.
Each time. So to win 4-3 in the last minute, they're not going to keep doing that.
Yeah.
So.
For Liverpool, though, I mean, there's never any problems about the final third, although Darwin Núñez is still really getting to find his rhythm. Midfield has been revamped, as you've already mentioned. Defence, you're now having to do without Matip long term. Andy Robertson's obviously out as well with injury. Is that where the real question marks lie with Liverpool at the minute?
It was always balance. It's not a question of defence, midfield or attack, it's the balance. Because if you think about where Manchester City, and you think about, they've got one defensive midfield player in Rodri. But the balance is always good because they work so hard to get back.
When they lose Rodri, they're a very different team.
Of course. But, so you got Kovacic coming in. But from our point of view, it was the balance. Now, I don't think our back four is worse last year or this year than they were 2 years ago. But the balance of the midfield, when you had Henderson, you know, Milner, you know, Keita when he played, and Wijnaldum, so they protected the back four. That's the way we play. So the balance is much better now with Szoboszlai, McAllister. The problem we have is obviously Fabinho left and Bajcetic was going to be that number 6. That would have been perfect for us in terms of having a number 6 like a Fabinho, because with Szoboszlai and McAllister, who really wants to play further forward, we're playing McAllister in that position. So the balance is what's important, not necessarily. So I don't think we have a defensive problem in terms of the defense. It's really just the balance. And the balance is much better if you look at what we have. But, you know, Endo's coming to play in that role. Sometimes we play McAllister. I think that is where we will address that situation as to whether it's Bajcetic coming back in or I don't think we're going to buy anyone in January, but we can cover that situation for now, because with that, it's not a problem because we're top of the league. But that was obviously the problem last year.
There's a nice parallel with having you as my guest and Mo Salah having just become part of the 200 club in terms of goals for Liverpool in all competitions, and 150 in the Premier League. Obviously a winger. Comes inside a bit like yourself. Well, a
good thing for him is coming on his left foot to score, coming in my right foot. So I wish I played on the right now too. I would have been scoring many more goals.
He's on the other side.
But Russia wouldn't have been happy. Or Aldo.
But how do you describe Mo in terms of greatest of Liverpool players?
Well, I think that now that he has committed to Liverpool, had he left last year, he would have been a great Liverpool player, don't get me wrong. But now you can put him up there with obviously the Kennys and the Rushies and the whoever else is, because of the fact that he's committed to Liverpool that period of time. So far, he's shown his loyalty and his resilience and his attitude, his commitment to the club. So yeah, Mo has got to be up there and of course, you know, you talk about the top 2, 3, 4, 5, but Mo will be in the top 5 of all time, 100%.
He's contracted at Anfield till 2025. Do you think he'll see out his contract, or do you think he will?
I would like him to. It's interesting.
It feels like there's almost a sense of inevitability. He's going to go to Saudi.
Well, we thought he was going to go this year.
Yeah, but how about the summer of 2024?
Well, the summer of 2024 never really comes, does it? Because, of course, you're thinking what's going to happen next year, and then we really don't know what's going to happen. We don't know what's going to happen. Because, of course, we live in an age now where if the Saudis come in and offer 200 million for Mo, what are you going to do? At 32, coming up to 33, you're going to say no to keep him for one more year? Is Mo going to be as good next year as he has been? Probably not, because of his age. We know he's fit. So it'll have to be a business decision. From Mo's point of view, he has to decide what he wants to do. If he then feels that, as much as people talk about, yes, he's made a hell of a lot of money at Liverpool and he's going to be comfortable. The money that's being talked of, can anyone turn that down type of thing? So, yeah. But in terms of what he's actually done and the fact that he didn't go when everybody seems to be going and he's now at Liverpool, means that I think that he would have earned the right to make whatever decision. If he chooses to go, you know, he'll go with my blessing if that's what he chooses to do, and especially if the club are going to get a lot of money for him. So I don't think that the wrong decision could be made. I'd love him to stay. I'm sure the club would love him to stay, but it is a business.
So that's Mo Salah. What about Jurgen Klopp? Where does he sit amongst the pantheons of managers at Liverpool for you?
I would put him up there with Shankly and Paisley and Kenny. Absolutely. I'd give Shankly, for me, is the best. And I felt I played on the Bill Shankly. I never did, because it's hard to create something, and he created the Liverpool we know. Don't forget, Liverpool had won the league in the 40s or whenever, and they've been there before. But the Liverpool we know is from Bill Shankly's era, from the second division. So to create that is difficult. Paisley continued that. So Bob Paisley has won much more than Bill Shankly. But for me, Shankly is the greatest because Bob Paisley just continued what he did. Kenny then took that on. Then we went through a bit of a lull, and I couldn't really see a manager coming in and taking us back to where we should be. And that's what Jurgen Klopp did. He started something new. So he didn't start from as low as Bill Shankly. So that is why I still have Shankly as the greatest. But what he's achieved in his 8 years at Liverpool, whereby I remember that period when we're talking about top four, and to all of the football fans who want to talk about being in the top four, any football fan saying we want to be in the top four means they want to be fourth or third at best, not first or second. So when you hear about people who want to be in the top four, it means third or fourth. For him to stop us being a fourth place team to being number one and challenging a Man City team who are probably the most incredible team in Premier League history shows that he has to be right up there with Shankly.
And it feels like he's not going to renew his deal. His current deal is he's going to take it to the end, and that's him done. Do you fear then for Liverpool a little bit, having seen what happened at United and Arsenal post Sir Alex Ferguson and Arsene Wenger?
Well, when you talk about learning lessons from other people, you know, and Liverpool were stuck in the Liverpool way for many years. Managers who came after Kenny was like, well, and Kenny was, you know, entrenched in the Liverpool way from Paisley and Shankly. And then any manager who came after is like, well, this is not the Liverpool way. This is not the Liverpool way. This is not the Liverpool way. Jurgen came. What's your way? Manchester United, since Alex Ferguson left. Louis van Gaal, Mourinho, great managers, but this is not the Man United way. So after Klopp, it's a question as to whether you're going to get somebody in and you're going to say, what do you want to do? It's got to be your way. Or are we going to just try and keep doing what Klopp does without being Klopp? Then that'll be difficult. So it really depends on who comes in and as to whether Liverpool and the fans are going to give him, like we did with Jurgen Klopp. Because when Jurgen Klopp first came, we may have been fourth or fifth and 20 points off the top, but we believed in him. As to whether that's going to happen, but we'll worry about that when we get to it. We're okay for now.
What do you think of what's happening in Saudi? Is it good for football?
It doesn't affect football at all. It doesn't affect football at all. If you look at the players who are going to Saudi at the 33, 34 years old at the end of their career, when people went to America, forget about the political ramifications or the moral justifications or whatever you're going to talk about. In the 70s, when Pele and Beckenbauer and Johan Cruyff went to America, and then you had David Beckham later, and that is not... Now, if you had the best 21, 22, 23-year-olds going to football, and all of them are going, the fact that one or two people, don't forget, it's a very, very small amount of people who are going at the end of their careers. And it's never going to challenge anything else apart from an older player who wants to make a bit of money. It's never going to challenge, you know, apart from Ruben Neves, as much as he's not going to come back. So
well, he's been the one against the grain, hasn't he?
He's been the one against the grain, and it seems that he may come back. So it's never going to challenge that. You know, they want to make a statement and they want to, you know, raise the profile of their country. But as I said, if all of a sudden, you know, because if you look at all of those teams, they've got 2 superstars in the team and the other 11 players. It's never going to challenge the European League at all. Golf may be a different thing, but in football, it's never going to challenge it. So it's not bad for football. It's not good for football. It's probably good for Saudi in terms of raising the profile, but it'll have no impact on football whatsoever, apart from maybe driving the salaries up for players who want to stay.
Yeah. What it has done is it questions people's morals from certain you know, kind of aspects of...
What I always say is, why is football being held to a different standard? Does it question Lewis Hamilton's morals to race there? To race there? Does it question AJ's morals to box there? The tennis players who go to Qatar and so why is football being held to a different standard? Because we accept, and Lewis Hamilton is a champion for LGBTQ and Black Lives Matter, whatever, but he races in Saudi. So and no one bats an eyelid. So why are footballers being held to a different standard? Maybe footballers shouldn't get involved in these culture wars in many respects, pretending that they care, because when push comes to shove, because a lot of people are talking about human rights issues and saying we have to make a stand, but then of course when you're offered money you do something else. That's why I think they should keep football out of it, because we should be governed by the highest authority in the land, which is the government. And if the government is going to do business in Qatar and Saudi, so should I as an individual. Tell the government to stop selling them arms or to stop having them coming here and buying up Mayfair or whatever. So it is, you know, I just think it's a bit contradictory.
So to that end, is it possible to separate sport and politics in your view or not?
Absolutely. Sport has no influence over politics whatsoever. You think what's happening in Russia, because Russia's going to be banned from the World Cup or the tennis players aren't going to play, is going to have, and we have to stop using them as scapegoats, because the people who are responsible are the governments and the countries. Don't use sports people to try and do your work for you, because they have no influence over it whatsoever.
Okay, we're going to go down the line, I suppose. It's still, in terms of, I suppose, importance, but it still means everything to football fans, is the introduction of VAR. First few years, we're still getting used to it. I think those implementing it, us receiving it as ex-players or pundits. What's your view on it?
VAR, with VAR, we are making infinitely less mistakes than without VAR. And of course, we highlight the big ones that we make. Liverpool have suffered from it. They benefited from it, in my opinion, against Crystal Palace. But if you think if we didn't have VAR, the amount of goals would have been given, offsides, whatever. So we're making, but of course, we want perfection. Now, football is a very difficult game to referee because it's a very ambiguous sport. What's a free kick? Football is not a non-contact sport. So the fact that I have actually touched you in the penalty box and you go down doesn't mean it's a penalty because there's contact. The contact has to be enough to make you go down. So it's a judgment as to whether it was or it wasn't. And because it's such a difficult sport to referee, we are increasingly making one team unhappy because lots of them can go, not about the obvious ones, like the Tottenham goal for Liverpool, or even the one, the sending off yesterday, which I think was ridiculous, the yellow card. But a lot of fans will go, yes, it is. Fans will go, no, it isn't. So, but I didn't think VAR was necessary to begin with. Let the referees just referee. But now that it's come in, I think we're going to stick with it. And now that it's in, I think it's made it better in terms of getting the right decisions more often than not.
Your former England teammate Gary Lineker said on Match of the Day the other day, he's gone 180 on it, from being an advocate to now saying he thinks it's not good for the game.
But you know what's going to happen without VAR is that the television, the media and the televisions will still show you that he's onside or he's offside and the ball's over the line. And you will not have been able to make the correct decision. So there'll be more criticism.
But then should VAR maybe just be honed in for the use of offsides and leave everything else to the on-field
Yes,
referee?
I think we're using it. We're using it too much. We are using it too much. But of course, I remember when Rugby Union brought in the video assistant referee, whatever they call it. TMO. And they had a few teething problems with it. And then it got better. For example, I remember watching England versus Ireland, where they wanted to check the grounding. It was a line out, and they took a quick line out quickly, and then they ran over, and they thought he'd put it down and said, check the grounding to see whether it was a good grounding. The grounding was good, so they said try. But his foot was over the line for the line out, so it should have been disallowed. Right. So what they say now is that, is there any reason why I should disallow the goal? They don't say check the grounding, they say, is there any reason? That's what should happen here. Instead of checking whether it's offside or not, because if the ball's gone out for a throw-in or whatever, so they should say, is there any reason? And the language used is important, because that Liverpool-Tottenham game, have you listened to the commentary on it? It was just so confusing. The language used is just so confusing.
It needed to be kind of scaled back.
Scaled back. Just say goal or no goal. You know, and then you can say why or not after.
Yeah, obviously the official at the time wasn't quite sure what was given, whether it was offside or whether it was a goal, and he said stand by decision.
They're teething problems. But as I said, I've watched football, and so many times I've gone, he's offside. No, he's straight again, and he's not. So for every mistake that they make, there are another dozen that they get right. And without VAR, they'll be getting a lot more wrong.
Okay. The other big issue this season has been the points deduction for Everton for the breaching of profit sustainability rules. Everton themselves brought it to the attention of the Premier League, and then after an independent panel came together, they decided to implement the 10-point deduction. They're appealing it, but is a points penalty the way forward for things like this, or would it be better to fine the club?
Well, it depends.
And actually, here's another thing, and maybe use that money to go down the pyramid, the football pyramid.
In what way? For the championship, for the grassroots, for who gets the money? Well, I mean, who, when you say down the pyramid, it's a hell of a pyramid. Does it go right to the bottom rung? Where does it go?
It is, but then, you know, what monetary value are you giving on a 10-point deduction? It's a lot.
Well, it depends. It depends on.
It could be a lot.
But to who? Maybe a lot to Man City, but maybe a lot to Everton. We don't know. Now, the situation with this is that I don't know what a fair. Let's talk about point deduction. Should it have been 8? Should it have been 6? Should it have been 20? Somebody said it should be 20. Some people say 6. Somebody say 10. We don't really know. These are untried and untested waters, because you know this. You have to set, and you can't set a precedent because there's so many different ramifications. Look at Manchester City. So to then say if Man City are they going to get 10 points? Are they going to get relegated like Rangers did? We don't really know, because this is something new. So to then say that this is the punishment for this, you can't really say. If they did something wrong, then of course they're going to pay the price. And As to whether, I don't know why Man City have got 100 charges
15
against them, but we don't know. But are they just fighting it? They've got money to fight it, so they can just keep appealing. So Everton didn't want to do that. Now, can you then say because they admitted it, they shouldn't get any points? I don't know what the answer is when it comes to this. I don't know that from a legal perspective what is right, what is wrong. I don't know.
But the view from the widespread view is it's a very heavy-handed approach to give them a 10-point penalty when there are other teams who are,
other teams have not been found guilty or caught.
But it's still in the process.
That's what I mean. And of course, when that happens, but Everton have admitted it, so therefore they've admitted it. You can't admit it and then say you can't do anything to us. So as much as other teams may be guilty, then either they admit it or they get found guilty, and we'll see what the ramifications are. Yeah. So of course, judging by that, the ramifications for other teams who get found guilty should be horrendous. But it's just a question as to what it is. So on the face of it, it does look harsh.
Yeah.
But I don't know from a legal perspective what the answer to it is.
What it has done is, of course, it's added to the mix of the relegation battle in the Premier League. And I think from day one, everybody just thought Luton, Sheffield United, Burnley, the three to come up will be the three immediately to go down. But we're getting this kind of sense the longer the season progresses, Luton aren't the whipping boys that many thought were going to be.
No, but Everton will be fine. I think that, of course, they didn't want the 10 points, but I think they took it knowing. And if you look at them this season, they'll be okay. And it really still is those 3 or 4, really. As much as the problem Luton have is they're doing really well. They go ahead and Liverpool up, but then they still drop points. Sheffield United have now changed their manager. Burnley, it's going to be difficult for them. So I think it's terrible what happened to Everton, but I think they're fairly comfortable in knowing that my brother-in-law's an Evertonian and I want them to stay up. I don't think that they would have done this last year. And it's interesting that they've actually decided to do it now rather than fight it until March and see what actually happens. But those 3 for me probably still are the ones who are going to go down.
If there are a couple of other teams that you're worried for who could be dragged into the mix?
Well, the thing about it is that you would have said Bournemouth, but look at what they're doing now. Yeah. And then Wolves didn't start off particularly well, but they're now picking up points and they're a good side. So
Forest and Palace are the two.
Forest more. I mean, Palace have got some hard games coming up, but I don't mind. Palace are a decent side. They play good football. They can score goals. That's the thing. If you can score goals, so I think Forest are one who could, and especially, the thing about Steve Cooper is that they are. Before they were 6 points outside of relegation, they talk about his job, which is crazy. I don't know what's happened to them in the last 5 games, but if you look at the points that they actually had, being 6 points off the bottom 3, and for them to be talking about him losing his job for me was crazy, because the harmony and the belief is important. Very much why I believe that Chris Wilder has come back into Sheffield United, because the fans like him and just to galvanise things, and they put in a great performance against Liverpool. Then they won the other day. As to whether that's a long-term answer, no. But I'm surprised about Steve Cooper being questioned.
Yeah. I think the owner might have other ideas. The fans, a lot of the fans, you get the sense they are on Steve Cooper's side. Roy Hodgson, as I mentioned, is at Palace. He's 76 now. They're in a bit of a rut at the minute. Cooper's been linked as being Hodgson's replacement. Is that something you could see happening this season?
No, I don't think if you're going to lose your job, which I don't think he should, from Nottingham Forest. Because do you think they're going to get relegated? You're going to go to a team above Nottingham Forest and get rid of Roy Hodgson. If there's a man who would steady the ship at Palace, it is Roy Hodgson. You bring him back to steady the ship. As to whether Roy, as I said, is 76, as to whether next season, if Roy's not there anymore, that could be because Steve's a very good manager. But I don't think Palace will. I think Palace have got too much. They've got good players, good attacking players, good harmony. So they're fine. But I like Steve Cooper. So possibly if Roy isn't there next year, that could be something that could happen.
Okay, let's just round this bit off. Just bringing it back to you, John. Do you have any regrets looking back over your career?
None whatsoever. I don't have any regrets in life. Only because anything you've done in your life, football or otherwise, anything you've done is necessary to get you where you are today. And what we like to do, we like to think about perfection, going back in our lives and thinking that was a bad decision. Because what we assume is that if I go back and change that, my life would have been better. And today I would have been happier. And I'm not willing to take that chance. Because, of course, yes, I would take the ball, go back and take the ball in the corner against Arsenal. Yeah. But they could have won 5-1. Who knows, So there's nothing, because, as I said, if I want perfection, and we all want perfection in my life, but because I'm happy with where I am, I'm happy with what I've done, I'm not willing to take a chance to go back and say, had I gone to Rome or had I, stayed at Liverpool, left Liverpool, my life would have been better, my career would have been better. You're taking a hell of a chance, aren't you? And as much as we think that it would be better, if you're not happy with where you're on, what you've done, take that chance. I'm not willing to take the chance. So I've done stupid things in the past, don't get me wrong. And things that you can regret because, I shouldn't have done that. But to then say I'll go and change it because my life would be better or in a better place, no.
Finally, how would you like to be remembered?
Who by?
Everyone.
My ego isn't big enough for me to really, worry about how people remember me. My friends and my family, I want to remember me fondly. But people I don't know, if they want to remember me, because of course, being a footballer and understanding football, and you said at the start when I mentioned that I wasn't the best and I wasn't the worst, you speak to some Liverpool fans, they're going to say I'm great. You speak to Man United fans, they go, he wasn't that good. What am I? I am who I am. And people remember me how they want to remember me.
Thanks for coming in, John. Hope you enjoyed it.
Pleasure.
We've been in the zone with John Barnes in association with Gambling Zone, the trusted online gambling comparison site. I've been Manish Bhasin, and I'll see you soon.